This is how you make an Upwork job post and guarantee that no freelancer, no agency worth their salt will even want to apply. So here I'm looking at an Upwork job post, and the requirements seemingly are pretty straightforward. They need an experienced WordPress/LMS consultant to finalize their LearnDash and WooCommerce setup. Okay, what are the requirements? Superficially, we need 7 things. We need to link products to courses. We need to set up a CRM and email automations, lesson structure, course structure, quiz structure, install an analytics tool, test everything, check hosting SSL performance and payment workflows, which is actually kind of 3 different things, and create documentation or SOPs, including potentially video documentation for future use by the team or other service providers. Okay, seems pretty straightforward on the surface, but of course, the problem that we always run into, and one of the reasons that at my agency MemberFix, we stopped doing fixed price projects, was because once you actually get on a call with the client, and let's say that you're the client, once you're on a call with your service provider, one of the questions, maybe the question that they should be asking you is, what does that look like? For example, structure courses, lessons, quizzes, and assessments, configure student dashboards, roles, and access. Well, that could mean a whole lot of different things, right? How many different user roles do you need? Do you have very granular access and permissions systems that you need? How many different types of learners are there? How many courses, lessons, and quizzes are there? I mean, if we're just talking about sheer volume of courses, some of the sites that I've worked with have hundreds of courses with hundreds of lessons and quizzes, thousands in total. That's just a pure volume job in and of itself, not even counting the technical components and the technical nuance involved. Similarly, how many courses are we linking to WooCommerce? As far as setting up the CRM, setting up a CRM, it's not a trivial thing. It could be very, very simple, or it could be very, very complex. So you see the problem that we start to run into, which is that the scope of a requirement and the criteria by which we agree, the client and the service provider can objectively agree that something is done, vary. And so it's very, very important to do some kind of discovery or analysis process, during which time we'll hop on a call, get super, super crystal clear on what you need and what you don't need. And on that basis, on some kind of basis of conversation, maybe some research is required, for example, for ProPanel to understand what can it do, what can it not do. Experience factors in. And on the basis of those sort of objective factors, we can say, okay, well, we don't know exactly how long it will take, but here's a range, a good faith estimate based on all of the information that we elicited from you, based on our copious experience. Hopefully the service provider you're working with has enough experience to be able to make a reasonable determination. And based on the sort of technical setup required, here's a range of how long we think it will take. And based on that range, here's a range of prices. Now, many service providers do work on a fixed price basis, and more power to them. We used to do that. We no longer do that, just because it puts the client and the service provider in an awkward position more times than not. For you as the client, it puts you in an awkward position, because if you agree on something that seems simple, winds up not being simple, and then the service provider realizes that it's a lot more work than they thought, that they're maybe not going to make any money, maybe they'll even lose money, they're going to start doing, let's say, things that you would prefer they wouldn't do. Many of them, not all of them, of course, but they'll start demanding more money. They'll start holding your project hostage. They'll just quit. There's any number of things that can happen once one party realizes that they're not benefiting in the transaction, right? The sort of ethical thing to do would be to say, well, hey, we mismanaged your expectations. We agreed on something. We shook hands on it. Now it's our responsibility to either deliver it or to wave the white flag and say, you know what? We messed up. We cannot possibly move forward. We're going to lose a bunch of money. This is way more work than we thought. And at least then it's honest, and they might even refund you and say, like, hey, like, no harm, no foul, our bad. That's the best case scenario, what I've seen many, many times. And I've seen this because clients come to us to clean up the mess of another collaboration uh, that oftentimes is the result of this kind of sort of cavalier attitude. Yeah, let's just jump in. Here are the requirements. No problem. We can do all of that without defining what all of that actually entails. And as the service provider, or let's say as you as the client, if you want to solicit the best type of talent, if you really, even if you have a fixed price budget, my recommendation is don't mention it straight away for two reasons. The first reason is it's going to scare away good freelancers and good service providers who might think it's not worth their time. And second, because you probably don't actually know what you don't know, and you might only want to pay $1,000, but to actually get the work done in a competent way that's correct and works the first time around, you might actually need to spend $2,000 or $5,000. And when a service provider sees something like fixed price $1,000, it may just be a strategy. Oftentimes a client is willing to move on price. It may just be a way to anchor the price. I get that. And I get budgets. Nobody has an unlimited budget. But at the same time, if you're engaging the expertise of a service provider to determine what needs to be done in the scope of the work, and then based on that scope, they will be able to determine reasonably what the range of pricing might be, then why are you saying this is how much I think it costs, right? This is a very big turnoff to service providers who respect their time and who respect their clients' time, by the way, when a client, before any conversation has taken place, before any discovery process has taken place, when they start to dictate terms and try to tell the world what they think a job costs or how long it should take or how easy it should be. Oh, this is should be an easy job, should be a quick job. Anytime I see anything like that, I'm immediately out because you probably have no basis to say that as a client, right? Even if you're a little bit technical, even if you're inside of your site, if you're in WordPress, you probably know enough to be dangerous. But if you're not doing this kind of work for clients, then you really have no rational basis to say that I think it'll take this much time. It's like, no, uh, it's our job to determine roughly how much time it will take because we have the experience, the breadth of experience, and we have the expertise to be able to tell you that and to be transparent about it. Now, the difficulty there for you, of course, is, well, is my service provider being transparent? Are they just jacking up the price or jacking up the hours? Are they adding some kind of a buffer? Could be. That really comes down to your level of trust with your service provider, their track record, their testimonials, their case studies, their reputation. But at the end of the day, it's not the place of the client to tell the service provider how to do their job or how long it will take. Now, if you have a budget, again, that's fine. You can introduce that once you've already discussed and done some kind of discovery process. And in fact, most service providers, especially for a smaller project like this, will do a discovery process for you either on a complimentary basis, or for a reasonable amount of money, a small amount of money, relatively speaking. And what you're essentially doing is you're paying to understand what needs to be done and to have a reasonable expectation so you can gauge your expectations on what the project is actually, what it entails, how much time it will actually take. And let's say it doesn't take 40 hours. Let's say the estimate is between 100 and 150 hours. Okay, well, knowing that, and knowing how much you're willing to pay or how much budget you have to pay, you can choose your service provider accordingly. You might have to choose somebody very, very cheap who's working for $10 an hour or $8 an hour. Don't expect to get the best quality. But okay, fine. If that's your budget, that's what it is. But otherwise, you don't actually know what's involved, and trying to tell people in advance, trying to tell your service provider in advance that, hey, I think it'll only take this much, or it should be a quick and easy job. Huge turnoff that is not serving you, that is not serving your interest. It's just going to repel good service providers. Okay. It's going to attract cheapo service providers who just do things by expediency, and the quality of the work will absolutely suffer. The quality of the collaboration and communication will suffer. You're going to wind up dealing with unethical people. Not always. You might get lucky. I hope you do. But we've just cleaned up so many messes that it's just clear to me that the less expensive way oftentimes is the more expensive way. Doesn't mean you have to overpay, but it does mean that you have to ground your numbers, your estimates in some kind of reality, in some kind of basis of experience and understanding and research and analysis, or we call it discovery, before you can start throwing numbers around, because otherwise you're just pulling them arbitrarily out of the air. And what you're really saying is, I only want it to take that much time. I only want to pay that much, right? Which, of course, that's what you want, but is that actually how much it costs or how long it would really realistically take? There's a mismatch there more often than not. Okay, so if you want to hire the best kinds of people, if you want to have fulfilling collaborations that are pleasant, that don't cause all sorts of hostage situations and unpleasantries, and you get quality work, even if you have to pay a little bit more for it, I would absolutely avoid bringing those numbers into the conversation at this point. You could always bring it up later once you've done some kind of discovery process. So that may sound harsh, or it may sound like I'm advocating for my side as the client. But remember, I've also spent probably $200,000-$300,000 on Upwork hiring other service providers, right? So I can be objective and say that this is exactly how I approach things with the people that I hire, because I know both sides of the equation and I know what works. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you agree or disagree, prove me wrong.